Season 2 of Gentlemen's History Hour is sponsored by HueRepublic.com. HUERepublic.com. Go to HueRepublic.com and get the latest colors to rep your hue. Gentlemen's History Hour, Season 2. Ladies and gentlemen, this is GHH. I'm Equality.
I'm Rob J10X.
I'm Brother Savvi Bay, a.k.a. Freddie Jones.
Hey, fellas, how y'all feeling?
Hey, man, we feeling good, man.
Hey, man, y'all looking good. Y'all shining, the bald heads is shining.
Hey, man.
The melanated brothers.
Hey,
y'all
man,
looking good.
Yeah, hey, and real quick, we got to acknowledge you, man, because, man, in the words of the great Dick Gregory, man, you know, commission, you did that poetry at Jones Hall, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, stood there flat-footed and spoke, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
10 toes down.
And, man, that Blue Lies, that was a dope. I've seen you perform about 5-6 times. And to me, that was like your best work, man. You own the stage, man. If you wanted to be an actor, you could pull it off. I believe that.
Appreciate it, man. What the Jesus and Murrow say, the brand is strong, man. We showing the diversity in the portfolios, man.
Hey, nice.
But so we can be real with the people, right? How this topic came about. Without disclosing all of the information, we're gonna protect the innocent.
Yeah, no, most
But we all went to college, and we all know, a road that we traveled. And one thing that comes up is HBCU pride.
Yeah.
HBCU, historically black colleges and universities. The sense of pride. I went to such and such. I went to FAMU. I went to PV. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the pride comes after.
Yeah.
Not necessarily when you're there, because you pissed off, financial aid ain't this ain't right. This,
we was proud while we was at FAM.
But I mean, you do have that, but that pride sometimes may not extend past going to homecoming.
Yeah.
When we talking about donating and building endowments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, showing your pride through that pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about HBCUs, and we were talking about the PWIs, which we call predominantly white institutions.
Exactly.
And those experiences, being at the college campus. Now, we're not going to deep dive too heavy into going into all of the history of HBCUs. We'll save that for like a part 2, because I think this is something we can do a part 1, part 2, part 3.
Mm-hmm.
But starting with HBCUs and going to HBCUs, and even before we go there, while it's on my mind, I guess the real and the not real of the Joe Biden.
Yeah. Oh, the
45 million.
Billion.
Oh yeah, billion.
45 billion. Now, as I read it was a Build Back Better, I guess bill or something that he was trying to get pushed, which was for about $3 trillion, and part of that was the 45 billion to HBCUs. So the Build Back Better got cut to like $2 trillion. So that kind of cut the 45 billion.
Ignominiously cut.
That's a big cut. 45. It ain't.
It went, I think it went from
28.
45 billion to what? 2 billion? Or?
Yeah, 45 to 2. Now, Grant, I haven't really deep dived on what it meant. I just kind of went off of funding was cut. And granted, when it comes to legislation, there's a whole arc to that and how stuff can be there and pork barrel and all of that.
Still has the vote to pass certain things, so they can always lean on it didn't pass because Congress didn't vote on it.
But I'm just,
but it's an underlying motif.
I'm a headlines guy. Look, last year I was reading headlines. Trump had record funding for HBCUs. Now I'm reading the headline that it's 48. Now it might be some K-roll in the headline, but
it had to be some cleanup.
Yeah, exactly.
So the cleanup comes with you were misinformed.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, but
and it's always like that with us.
Sometimes be like, but I think with politics a lot of times they stay around long enough. The new boss always gonna start looking like the old boss. When it comes to black people.
So with HBCUs and PWIs, there's a micro level. The micro level is, man, I went to such and such HBCU. Man, we got cold alumni and da-da-da. And when I went there, da-da, and it produced productive people and da-da-da. And when and that's the micro level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then the macro level is institutions as a whole that are historically black colleges and universities. What type of black person are they
producing
exactly out in this 2021 AD.
Yeah.
Or even back from, hell, we can start after Brown versus Board of Education.
Okay, yeah.
And I think administratively too, like where's the ship being guided? Because I was just listening to Dr. Claude Anderson this week, and he got a lot to say about HBCUs. But I didn't even know this. A lot of PWIs, I believe, if they get their enrollment up to somewhere like around 21%, Latino or Asian, whatever, they're gonna start being able to qualify for what was initially supposed to be funding for HBCU. So,
see how that works.
It was, and by the time we air the show, I get the exact number so we can put in the show notes. But it's a lot of, I think the HBCU is really about to be sink or swim time. Like either be exceptional and have a unique value proposition, or be cannibalized into just some mixed enrollment, small school. That's.
I want to give a caveat. This is not a brickbat to HBCUs, right? Mm-hmm. I want to give a plaudette to HBCUs because they're 3% of universities, but they graduate 20% of black people. Mm-hmm. They have 50% of the teachers and the administration and the personnel. So we're educating. HBCUs are educating black people. But the contention I have, and it stemmed from a spirited conversation we had earlier, is what type of individuals are HBCUs are producing. My contention is, and shout out to HBCUs because my father went to HBCU, Wiley College, played basketball for Wiley College. I want to give a shout out to Kevin Cosby, president of Simmons College in Kentucky, who's really doing the fight for HBCUs, fight for reparation. And his contention is we're owed a certain amount. So when you get the $45 billion cut down to $3 billion, and not only is it $3 billion, they have to split that with universities who are white universities who have black people in it. So that's another switcheroo. So not only is the $3 billion getting broken down to HBCUs, but white universities are getting it too. So my contention is what type of individuals are HBCUs producing? And we had a conversation about radicals and versus the supplicants.
The radical going to an HBCU producing radical blacks, as opposed to PWIs producing radical blacks.
Yeah. And I guess the background being that if we were to pretty much go through the Panthers, pretty much I guess we could almost say everyone, maybe with the exception of Stokely Carmichael, and I consider Dr. King radical, for his time, so you have Morehouse, but generally speaking, it definitely seems like a lot of the more renowned black activists, were coming from. I won't say it's kind of tough to even say a lot because you do have Fisk, you do have.
Yeah.
But I mean, definitely the more radical narratives seem to have come from, people who hadn't necessarily attended the HBCU
at a certain point in time.
At a certain point in time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that the fight for securing rights from white people. My contention is black people that matriculate and graduate from HBCUs have a problem or a bit mealy-mouthed to fight for power from white people. In terms of job security, labor, they produce the buffer class.
So we're trained workers.
Exactly.
But not only now, this is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. Trained workers that won't rebel against that system.
Yeah.
Now you're saying because they're products of that HBCU, you think?
Yes, but not to, like I said, lampoon or lambast HBCUs because it's a deeper issue. And we started off with funding.
Yeah, well, we don't want the heat from the HBCU. They don't want that heat from the HBCU.
Well, for the record, I'm Lamar University alumni.
Yeah.
African American lit business management. But I noticed a couple of years ago that a lot of what we call radical. When we say radical, when I say radical, I'm talking about politically
let's go
radical. You know what I'm saying? And when we're talking about militant, I rather would say bold.
Okay.
Instead of using militant.
Because the conversation earlier, what I brought up was, and I'm glad you touched on it, Rob, with the MLK. Radical, to me, okay, Martin Luther King graduated from Morehouse. And then historically, we know a lot of these HBCUs were started as like seminary schools.
Yes.
Or they were coming about, white abolitionists.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Trickling down to the South. But Morehouse producing the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And a nonviolent approach is a radical idea. It may not be militant, but it's radical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, radical is one of those words where even if we look at it, what is you say it doesn't produce a lot of that, but I think if we went back to the mission and the vision, what is the goal or what is the university striving to produce? And
That's a great question, man.
Because I think to me, PV produces productive people. That's a great mission to me. I just love PV, man. Like I don't know. We have a slogan at Fam like that, but to say that, I don't know where. Now, I would think if I was, president of a university, I would want to foster independent thinkers, but I don't know if I necessarily would have a goal to be a factory for radical. 'Cause I think radical thinking is kind of a calling a lot of times, something that you personally decide. I don't think it's something that can be put in somebody. I think you can be led to that, but you have to decide that, hey, I believe in this enough to sacrifice and put out whatever I'm gonna have to put out, because it really is a sacrificial decision, especially in 2021 when you don't have to do that necessarily to be that. So I guess I can ask you, like, how
I want to put it in context. When we talk about radical, I want to say political radical, because the Black's Law Dictionary describes the definition of radical came, in terms of politics, came in 1818. Just radically politically. And when I say radical, I'm talking about making the powers that be, wherever you at, uncomfortable, to take power away, to be able to become power, because they have always tried to strip our self-sufficient, being able to sustain for ourselves, labor relations, unions, what they call socialism. I say that HBCUs don't produce that, because we're talking about what is education. It's an inducing process to pull something that's in you out of you, or to cultivate it. But then you can also get radicalized 3 different ways: by getting fired, dumped, or going to jail. That's like 3 big radicalizing things that experience in your life. When I'm talking about being radical, I'm saying that, hey, you're gonna have to piss white people off. You're gonna have to rail against certain things to be able to get certain power.
Let's give an example of a person that you feel like they came from a predominantly white institution that's radicalized, that came from that system.
Well, not only PWIs, but I also look at it like people that didn't go to college too.
Self-educated, not self-educated, but
yeah, you know what I'm saying, like a Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? But I look at basically the entire Black caucus are supplicants. Hat in hand supplicants who really believe that Trump was going to give out this money, and were kowtowing, being lick spittles to him, only to get to where we're at now, from $45 billion being cut to $3 billion. And they do this othering as if Biden and Trump are not on the same page, or white supremacy is not a part of this entire system. When we were talking about critical race theory, it's all a part of a system that we're living in, and they're going to make sure that, hey, we're going to only get a derisory amount of, not too much. It's always a paltry amount whenever it goes through, get chopped down from 45 million to 3 billion.
I guess from a causation standpoint, though, I could say, like, I don't know how we could attribute how much of that. Sheila Jackson Lee, she's a Harvard grad. Yeah. I mean, speaking of just our representatives, I think I believe Al Green. No, I don't even know exactly what school he went to, but generally speaking, more. I would, assume, because I don't have the data in front of me, that more of our Congress people are not from HBCUs.
Well, it's a great deal of the Black Caucus, especially
if
the
you
seniors.
consider what Mickey Leland was doing to be radical, when you're talking about TSU and Barbara Jordan, you consider that to be radical. Those are products of HBCUs.
Yeah.
But I would pose the question of is the job of the institution to produce that, or the job of the institution like, what would you rather have? The radical thought being produced from the institution, or the institution producing a person that can create jobs for Black people?
That's a good question.
I would rather. I think in 2021, creating the jobs, and I do think a part of what you're saying as far as like the goal of like assimilating in the culture, not really raising much of a ruckus, the whole nine. Yeah. Going to FAMU and initially starting off in the 5-year MBA program, we were taught a lot of brilliant skills, but at the same time, maybe we're taught almost like, imagine a boxing gym where everybody does a shoulder roll and everybody does that. So we were taught to ask, 3-pronged questions with the and I mean, these are great. This is a great question to ask, but at the same time, we're doing that to create an effect in this person who's being asked mind of how they see us per se. And at that time, as I would say, FAMU 5-year MBA program was a radical program to say, hey, in 5 years we're gonna graduate you with an MBA. It wasn't accredited, but I mean, you had kids coming out making, $90,000. You had people taking year-long internships while in school.
I think what Freddie's talking about is being radicalized and rebelling against the system, not assimilating into the system.
So my whole point of bringing that up was, at the time when this was created, there was a need for us to be able to get in corporate America. And I think what happened maybe HBCUs are slow to pivot. And I think,
that's a great point.
That the initial cause was something valid in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that radicalism should lead to revolutionaryism, like being revolutionary. We know how this thing started. We know that it was rooted in capitalism through exploiting labor, slavery. Labor is the most important issue in this country. It's how this country was developed, by exploiting labor. When I'm talking radicalism, to me, it has to equal into being revolutionary. I went to school, I took macro and microeconomics. I was taught Fordism, Malthusianism, casuistry, different things like that. My professor instilled into us how to vet certain things. So when I hear or I read or I study a Thomas Sowell, then I know when he's throwing sauce in the game. Now, I always call him a brilliant but deadly.
And Thomas Sowell is a Black
economist. You know what I'm saying? Who made book and wrote book after book about the same thing. Now, he talked about Black immigrants that come over here that ascend higher, like a Colin Powell or second generation. But he always attributed Black failure to our culture. You get what I'm saying? Or he'll break down something that deals with economic to put the blame back on Black people. You get what I'm saying? But I was cultivated in college to be able to sniff out that. You get what I'm saying? To rail against that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
You think like the HBCU experience, we're kind of living in a Wakanda Nirvana a little bit?
A bubble.
Yeah, but I think HBCUs are doing what it was meant to do. You talk about 3% of universities. You talk about 107 HBCUs in this country. Only have $3.9 billion. I mean, University of Minnesota, that's their endowment by itself, just one university. I think that it's doing what it's meant to do. So it's not to, like I said, lampoon or lambast HBCUs. It's more of the structure, the systemic structure, because we're talking about structures of racism.
It's the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
So,
and we're talking about this economic disparity in endowment. Because when we talked earlier, money provides the space, tenure provides the space to be able to cultivate certain students because you ain't got to worry about losing your job.
One thing I think about, like this conversation kind of goes into the Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois ideology. Even the whole idea of the talent tent could be like the college people.
Yeah.
And,
I think
Booker
that's
T.
what it
Washington.
was.
But radicalism at that time, Booker T. was not considered radical.
No.
Being in the South and starting Tuskegee, you think about it, an institution that I would say was the STEM program of its time. Okay. Science, technology, engineering, architecture. I would even add the A for STEAM and mathematics. So you're talking about a historically black university at Tuskegee. The president is Booker T. Washington. Mm-hmm. For women, this is because of the time period. Yep. They're learning the domestics, not just how to make a bed, but how to actually make a mattress.
Yeah.
So you're learning how to make the mattress and make the bed.
Yeah.
You're learning how to make the brick as well as build the building, and then we can sell this brick, and this is how we're making money.
Yeah.
You're making the brick yourself. You're manufacturing the brick. You're not gonna go and you're not gonna buy the shoes. I'm gonna teach you how to make the shoes, but not you're gonna make the leather as well. Yeah. Now, this is what's going on. And another HBCU grad is W.E.B. Du Bois, who went to Fisk. Yeah. This is prior to going to Harvard and all that. He went to Fisk. His ideology conflicted with that. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you, Fred, during that time period, would that be an example of, because see, in my mind, what Booker T was doing was radical.
Yes.
Now, it may not have looked as such during that time. It was like, oh, he's training Negroes to continue to work with their hands.
Yeah.
But Du Bois was like, no, we need to start working with our minds.
And to answer your question, and sidebar, W.E.B. Du Bois was fired from Atlanta University, which is Clark now, because of his radical thinking. Now, when I'm talking about radicalism, I do want to we got to add context, because there's something in law that's called context. We have to have context. What Booker T was doing, I laud, because we need that. But I'm talking about in terms of politics. When you read W.E.B. Du Bois' work about fascism, about capitalism.
But check this out. In the faculty, because part of it is the radicalism.
Yeah.
So the faculty at Tuskegee during that time, he had architects, black architects that were working there. What's the man? It's slipping my mind. God dog it. Talked about the peanut.
George
Washington Carver.
Yeah.
Working there. You know who he offered a job to?
Who?
That turned it down?
Who?
W.E.B. Du Bois.
I wonder why.
He offered him a job to teach at Tuskegee. Du Bois was like, nah, I'm not getting with that program.
Yeah. Drake ain't working at Donda.
But like I said, but
I just thought of that. That's how deep it went during that time of radical thought.
But he did work at a historically black university. I think that W.E.B. life is a long life, dying in 94 in Ghana, pivoting a few times.
Yeah, he was able to live.
So it's more, he was actually able to live to be able to pivot. And we see that with Dr. King towards the end of his life getting more radical. And then Brother Malcolm beginning to adopt certain principles before he died. It would have been interesting to see where they would have went to be 94, like a W.E.B.
And the only reason I brought it up was just to go back into, the start and two people that came from HBCUs and that opposing thought and their views on what was radical at that time as opposed to what was not. And then you look at it now in the context and say, damn, we need more people learning the trades and learning how to work with their hands.
Definitely seems like the W.E.B. Du Bois, at least from what I know of his philosophy, it seems to be the one that has won, because everyone, even on our HBCU campuses, everyone is preparing for this magical opportunity that's going to happen post-graduation versus like an integrated experience that immerses you in the community during graduation. I'll give you a perfect example. Like when I was really into code and tech a lot heavier, I would try to reach out to like TSU students, but a lot of times if they were anything before a third year student, they're still learning theory. They haven't even started with the most basic platform. So it's like, and one of the things that I question is, take TSU for example, and you have a business program. Why would it
when
not?
you say TSU, because you got to distinguish, because we got people watching it that may think
Oh,
you're talking about Tennessee State.
Oh, okay, Texas,
So-
Texas Southern University
Yeah.
in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Third Ward. So
We don't want the TSU, the Texas,
yeah.
the
yeah,
Tennessee
no,
State
you know,
people
hey, and,
flexing
you know,
with us.
Tennessee State, it's all, hey, it's all good. All love to them too.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, well, I'll be the school that's, you
Yeah,
know.
they take that TSU label serious.
Yeah.
But like, okay, you have a business, you have a school that's in Third Ward that has, you know, a certain segment of black entrepreneurship in it. You know, we know some business owners in Third Ward.
Yeah.
I would think a pretty simple assignment to assimilate, especially your business school students. Here is a book. I want 5 business owners in this community to sign this book, dated the day you were there, you come back with their business card. That would actually make you go out and meet someone in real life. When we have these programs, we have the graphic students, they go to class with other graphic students, they do projects with other graphic students, business, that, and other. You have a school publication, why is it not the business students have to work with the graphic students because the business students go and sell ads? And
Cross-pollinate.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
really have
yeah.
an integrated experience, and I think like that part, that seems to me like that would be more a Booker T.
Yeah,
based feeling.
that philosophy. Yeah, and it also made me think of when you said the Du Bois philosophy is winning, because that whole talented 10, that Sigma Pi Phi Boule,
Yeah.
that goes into the elitism
Yeah.
of the historically black colleges and universities. That
Yeah.
when you go and you're going, it almost goes all the way back to the our kind of people type of thing
Yeah.
with certain black people and colorism and
And
all
that
of
was
that
a part
stuff.
of, and that was a part of my experience. So, you know, we used to travel from college to college, as we all did when we were in college. You know, and I'm going to a PWI. When I go to these universities, black universities, because all my cousins went to TSU, Prairie View. My little brother went to Prairie View. Shout out to Prairie View. My cousins, everybody went to Prairie View. So I come there, and it was refreshing to me to see, you know, all these black people that I grew up around, because we grew up on the North Side. So, but only to see them mimic main, it's like a microcosm or a macrocosm with this elitism or classism. He's a alpha. He's a, you know, KK Saab band or whatever.
The tribalism of
Only to experience that,
like,
you know, you can't sit here. You can't. These are the cool kids, you know, and it kind of mimics white supremacy or the outside world that they're gonna later migrate into. I guess what I'm saying with W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T, you see, at the end of the day, who was more a threat to white supremacy, who became public enemy number one, who became an anarchist by, you know, what's the guy, the Fed, FBI, the
Hoover.
devil.
Hoover.
Yeah,
Oh,
Hoover.
okay. Oh, okay.
J. Edgar
Who
Hoover.
was banned from coming here, who got his passport taken, the reason why he passed away in Ghana.
Oh,
You
and
get what I'm-
delving into communism.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Or
Because he
being
started talking
associated
about,
as being a
he
communist.
started talking about politics. He started talking about actually taking power from, you know what I'm saying, examining, measuring, taking power from white people, or talking about capitalism versus socialism. You know what I'm saying? What the Panthers was on, because W.E.B. Du Bois died around 60 in the early 60s,
Yeah, he was
right?
almost
Right
100.
when King was doing the march at Washington. You get what I'm saying? So you'll see that he was delving more into politics. And I guess my biggest thing is taking power from whites. I'm talking about politics. You know, what Booker T, all that has its place. Black entrepreneur, what do you say? Draw the water from the well. What is Booker T's quote?
Oh yeah, cash your
cash
well,
cash your bucket,
cash your
where
bucket
you are.
where you
Yeah,
stand.
I mean, I get it. And all of, every brother that we examine have their place, but the position I'm coming in is more radical politically to revolutionize. In not just Black Panther, I'm talking about the whole black nationalism, because Black Panther movement is inside the
I
black
understand that,
nationalism.
and the only one thing I do want to say is with that thought is great, but we got to be careful sometimes, because some people will lead the sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah,
And I think also when you go back to that experience at PV, you know, I think in a sense maybe that is somewhat of a luxury to be able to say that, hey, we don't have to, because I do kind of, take issue with the idea that all black people have to like each other, have to be, have to be this one monolithic thing. And I even, was able to experience something where I had like a small altercation with a guy with no big deal, whatever. But when it was time to kind of make peace, my natural inclination is, hey, let's talk, let's do it. And the guy was like, man, I ain't trying to do none of that. And at first I was like, man, it's kind of weird. But then I got a chance to realize, wait, I can coexist with somebody who I really don't necessarily see that way. And now it wound up being a healthy experience, So I do think like that may be a luxury that you get because we are in abundance. Obviously, if you were at, UT and, it's 3,000 black students and 60,000 white, it wouldn't be you can't sit here, you can't, type of thing.
I think the issue is deeply rooted though, because that does a disservice to when they get out of those universities, how they're going to operate in mainstream society. Are they going to be fighters? Are they going to, because they want to get jobs, they want to just assimilate.
But are you radical at a PWI because you see a quote unquote common enemy per se? Like I can say I've never went to a college where I had to think if a white fraternity was doing a blackface party, and we had to go protest, and then I become radicalized, and I've never experienced that. Or we can afford the tenure of one of these professors, like a Michael Legg Dyson or a Cornel West. They would probably turn down a job at an HBCU because they can't pay them like the other universities will pay them. And then I come into that university and I become radicalized by that.
And that could be, and it's just, like I said, it all boils down to a systemic issue. You get what I'm saying? So a lot of these PWIs that we talk about, like maybe a UCLA or maybe Oklahoma or whatever, who was producing a lot of the radical thoughts or the revolutionaries, had professors who didn't have to concern themselves about being fired. It could be like maybe, like we talked earlier.
Or if they had HBCUs in California, who knows if those guys would have went to those
Exactly.
schools.
So you talk about HBCUs largely exist where?
Well, down south now, Alabama has the highest. They got 12. They have the most HBCUs.
So we're in the heat of the, in white supremacy.
Whereas it didn't really get all the way to the West Coast.
Yeah.
We're starting,
that would have been interesting to see.
We're starting in Pennsylvania the first. So you kind of trickling down the Pennsylvania, DC area. Then after Civil War, now we start trickling down to the southern.
That would be interesting to see if we had HBCUs on the West Coast.
And I said we weren't going to delve into all of that.
No, but
that's interesting though.
Because the one thing though that we are leaving out, and I've been, some of what we're saying kind of gives a little bit of what do you bring to the table energy, and it kind of, because I've personally seen the intrinsic power of, I've seen what Morehouse does to a guy who's getting bullied, everything like that, and I've seen a metamorphosis that's happened on HBCU campuses with countless people. So it's like I don't know where that's quantified at. I don't know what type
of metamorphosis though.
I mean, from basically going from being unassured, lacking confidence, basically not expressing himself, to being, really a strong, valuable.
And I like that, because that's what I'm saying. HBCUs has its place because they install a sense of pride, a sense of historical legacy. When you go to Prairie View, they give you the history of that. You could tell me the history of how it was started. FAM, we talk to different people that go to different universities. They can give you the history, instill a sense of pride, a sense of bravado. Yep. I love to see brothers that's arrogant.
But we gotta also, we can't negate the ancestors whose shoulders we walked on, that they didn't have a choice but to go to an HBCU to pave that path to where, okay, at a certain time, that's where you had to go. Yeah. Then things opened up, and people had those opportunities. But also, before we wrap up this part one session talking about these HBCUs and these PWIs, we got to be mindful of the processes of selection sometimes with HBCUs. Exactly. If it's an open enrollment, then of course I'm getting everything at my HBCU. Yeah. If I can pick of the litter blacks at my college, Then I want in the draft. Oh, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to open enrollment, I got to deal with every type of black person. One advantage that I will say from an HBCU is you said we're not monolithic. I learned to deal with every type of black person sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to deal with this type of black person. You're going to deal with the radical black person that's there. You're going to deal with that docile Negro that's like, I'm just there to get a job and work. You deal with that.
Most definitely.
Some people say that it doesn't prepare you for the quote unquote real world.
Yeah.
Because, you just been around black people and you've been in this Wakanda bubble, as people would say. Then you get out and you say, really, it's the people that have not been exposed to that world that have a hard time, and they have to create diversity and inclusion and all of this stuff. And you're saying, I've dealt with every type of black person, but it's the opposite. The guy from Texas A&M ain't dealt with every type of black person.
Yeah.
He has one or two black friends.
It has its disparities, and I think that when you talk about open enrollment and you have the D-SUs mixed with the legacy, because you spoke about the legacy.
Hey, my parents went to this school, so this is where I'm going. Then another guy's like, hey, I'm just from the hood, but mama said, hey, you gonna go to college. If they'll accept them, they gonna take them. Now they may, that one guy may go from Detroit Red to El Haj Malik Shabazz. Or he may drop out. But he has a chance at an HBCU.
But it's interesting you say that, because it's all about, even when you go to high school, or how they're being cultivated and what they're producing there too. To be able to get, because
that's where it starts.
When I read Richard Rothstein, The Color of Law, and speaking of your boy Thomas Sowell, he had a segment in one of his books. He talked about Houston and how the North Side was producing so many elite black kids from a certain high school. We'll pick up on that on the next part too. But he did talk about the cultivating process that went into that, and why we were producing on the North Side so many. You know what I'm saying? These high schools that were predominantly black, they're segregated. And Richard Rothstein writes about the segregated North Side of Houston and how they had elite type of black at Smiley, Northeast side. So we need to delve into that.
One thing though, I just want to touch before we wrap it up too, is just you use the word like preparing for the real world, and like I think we really have to be really re-explore that, because I can say, honestly say, I'm black. I'm primarily a reseller. I do website. I have black clients. I have a black partner. I have a black, so the idea that, the real world is assimilating into, you do have the option to live. If the presence of your issues with white is that, you can't never escape necessarily the underhand and reach, but you can live a life that really doesn't have them in your, day to day.
I think the reality is 190 million white people.
But I'm saying for me, after going to FAMU and seeing guys who had created things, guy Tommy D had a restaurant, a guy had, another student. When I was 19, my internship was with a 21-year-old. Yeah. This guy built a six-figure. So it showed me that you can provide for yourself in a black, experience. It's not for everybody. There have been a lot of struggles with it as well. But, that knowledge of self, not only as far as who we truly are, but that we can actually be self-sufficient within ourselves. I
love the Nation of Islam. And, I subscribe to the tenets. My dad was in it. But it's certain things that I do disagree on, respectfully. And separate is not always equal, because when you're separate and you do things, then you're going to be distributed certain things that's not, not up to par, like books and stuff like that. It makes you an easy target. Like they switched to zip codes with the red line and they don't do race anymore. So the reality that I'm saying is 190 million white people. It's impossible to, when you say the real world,
I say quote unquote
the real world, but you're going to have to,
because that's what they tell you in college.
You're going to have to deal with them at certain point. You can live a life anecdotally. You can live a life like you do just dealing with black people. The thing about the Madam C.J. Walker is she could have been a billionaire and not a millionaire had she had access to the larger pool of money, like Mercer Baradaran, right, with the Color of Money, that black people can only do so much, but we never had access to be able to get bailed out from the bigger banks. whenever it was a run on banks, and that's just the cycle of how things roll. When panic happened, when catastrophes happen, people pull money out. The bank, they rush to the bank and pull the money out. We never had access to the larger pool of money, which we know what that is, to get bailed out. I'm saying that even into like dealing with whites. So you can laud the first black whatever, but can you imagine if it wasn't segregated or racism and they had access, because Madam C.J. Walker had hair care that could help everybody. You get what I'm saying? And she could have been a billionaire. So the real world, when you talk about HBCUs, from my experience, and this is anecdotally, but I'm pretty sure we can do a deeper dive in it, is a lot of my siblings and cousins and friends had a hard time adjusting when they came out into the mainstream society, dealing with the nuances of white people, knowing how not to put this in the email, knowing how this could be misconstrued, knowing how, you know what I'm saying, knowing how to circumnavigate in those fields. But I had to kind of, hey, look, I went to school with these.
Yeah, you
okay, I can
you
see
get what
that.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got to deal with these unforeseen nuances and these subtleties.
And I guess I just feel now some of those nuances are transferring over to where when they say inclusion and diversity, what they mean is, how do we not offend black people?
Exactly.
Yeah.
As opposed to like your cousin and you're teaching them how not, hey, you can't offend this person at your job. This email may
this
come
is the
off
way to
offensive,
do it.
or this is a way to do it.
Yeah.
Where it comes across more professional.
Yeah, you can check them after work behind the building.
Whereas now we're living in a time where it's kind of almost as if they have racial sensitivity classes on how to deal with us in the workforce. What do I call you? Can I call you black? You're African American. Like, I don't want to offend you.
Yeah.
I can't.
And I got a problem with that diversity and inclusion, but my problem is not the problem that white people have with it. You know what I'm saying? Because they have a different connotation on what that problem. My problem is diversity and inclusion only in color, but you can have the same politics.
Yeah. But that goes, once again, that can go into the scholarship of PWIs as well.
Yeah.
With racial diversity and inclusion. So we're going to select this amount, the quota of black people. So,
but they have the same politics that we want. Yeah.
So the next. Oh, go ahead.
I just got it because y'all brought it up. I just have to tell a 90-second racial and diversity story, man. Look, I started HBU and a brother had told me about the position, so I'm there, and HBU they're open faith, right? So I'm in the VP's office. And he said, we're having a marketing meeting. He said, "Hey, I want to start this meeting off with a prayer." He said, "Prayer." He said, "Lord, I want to thank you for sending Robert. Bless him." And this, I'm like, man, wow. I'm like, man, ain't nobody ever just prayed and been thankful to the Lord for me like that. Now, it was an impassioned prayer, right? And me and the brother sitting right next to each other, everyone else sitting around, right?
Yeah.
As soon as the prayer ends, man goes into a 20-minute tirade about Obama ruining the world, just down and then into the other. Like, he was making it clear. Let me make it clear. New Negro, and it was the strangest microaggression I ever experienced, man. I was like, what just happened? But
I think the next session, man, I want to delve more into the radicalism.
Yeah.
The reason why HBCUs were started.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that'll give some good context and some examples of what we consider people that were radicalized that came from these PWIs.
Yeah.
So we have an idea, but gonna wrap it up, fellas, man. This is a good conversation. I think this is one that most people can relate to.
Most definitely.
So this GHH, man, signing off once again on Equality.
Rob J 10X.
Freddie Jones, aka Musab Yassir Bey.
Hey, before we get out of here, man, y'all hit that subscribe button. Y'all know what it do. GHH.
Peace.
If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.